The box was already open when Lydia looked down at it. Black velvet, cream satin lining, and sitting inside, a necklace, diamonds in a graduated line, the clasp stamped with the logo she knew better than her own handwriting. The logo she had designed herself 13 years ago on a napkin in a Vancouver coffee shop that no longer existed. Her husband, Brendan Fair, 39-year-old senior partner at a Bay Street law firm, stood at the center of the Rosecliff ballroom with a glass of champagne raised and a smile on his face that she had not seen in 2 years. Around them, 47 guests, colleagues, clients, his parents, her in-laws, people she had hosted for dinners and charity galas and long weekends at the cottage, all watched, waiting. 14 years of marriage, Brendan said, his voice carrying easily across the room. And she still puts up with me. Laughter. The warm, indulgent kind that rooms full of expensive people produce when the moment calls for it. Lydia, 37-year-old wife of Brendan Fair, founder and silent principal of Vos Maison Group, looked at the necklace in the box and did not move. She recognized the piece. It was from the Latitude collection, third run, released 4 months ago, retail value, $4,200. She knew this because she had approved the price point herself, sitting at the long table in the boardroom on the 14th floor of a building whose lease was in her name. She also knew it was not the original. The clasp was wrong. The stamp was 1 millimeter off center. The stones at this distance had the particular flat light of cubic zirconia rather than the deep refraction of VS1. Someone had paid perhaps $60 for it. Brendan was still smiling. Lydia closed the box. They had met in their mid-20s at a fundraiser for a children's hospital in Toronto. Brendan had been finishing his articling. Lydia had been working double shifts at a design studio in Liberty Village and spending her nights building a business plan that everyone around her told her was impractical. She had liked his directness then. She had liked that he asked her real questions. What are you building? What does it need to work? What are you afraid of? She had told him the truth, all of it, the brand concept, the sourcing model, the reason she had named the company Vos Maison, her grandmother's name, the woman who had taught her that beautiful things were not frivolous, they were necessary. Brendan had listened. He had said, "I think you're going to do it." She had. The first Vos Maison boutique opened in Yorkville when Lydia was 29. The second followed 18 months later in Montreal. By the time she was 34, there were 11 locations across Canada, a licensing deal in the UK, and a waiting list for the signature jewelry pieces that ran 4 to 6 months. The company was private. Lydia had kept it that way deliberately. Brendan had known, in the early years. He had known everything. He had helped her review the early partnership agreements, flagged a clause in a supplier contract that would have cost her badly, driven her to meetings when she was too tired to trust herself on the highway. Somewhere in the years that followed, he had stopped paying attention. She wasn't sure when exactly. The drift had been so gradual that she had not noticed until it was already a distance. By the time she was 36, he did not know the company's current revenue. He did not know the name of her CFO. He had stopped asking. She had stopped telling. His father, Edmund Fair, 68-year-old retired investment banker, had discovered Vos Maison 2 winters ago at a client dinner in the financial district. He had come home raving about it, the quality, the craftsmanship, the exclusivity. He had bought his wife a piece from the heritage line for their anniversary and declared, at a family dinner, that whoever owned that company had genuine taste, which was increasingly rare. Lydia had been sitting at the other end of the table, passing the bread. She had not said anything. It had become a kind of private accounting that she kept through that year and into the next. Edmund referencing Vos Maison at Sunday dinners, in conversations with his golf friends at Brendan's firm's holiday party, calling the brand a real find, a hidden gem, saying he wished he had gotten in early as an investor. Brendan each time, nodding, adding nothing. His mother, Constance Fair, 65, had gone further. She had worn a Vos Maison piece to Lydia's own anniversary dinner, the Latitude pendant, the real one, the one Lydia had worn when she approved the design, and said, across the table, "This brand is the only jewelry worth buying in this country right now. I don't know who's behind it, but they understand what women actually want." Lydia had smiled. She had refilled Constance's wine glass. She had said, "I'm glad you like it." She first noticed the hotel charges in January. Brendan managed his own finances. They had kept separate accounts since early in the marriage, a practical decision that had suited them both. She had not questioned it. She had her own money, more of it than he knew, and she'd never needed to look at his statements. But the notification came through on a shared credit card they used for travel, an account she checked maybe twice a year. 4 charges at the Hurrick Hotel in Mississauga, Wednesday afternoons. The Hurrick was a 45-minute drive from their house. It was not a hotel either of them had any reason to visit. She did not confront him. She waited. She hired a private investigator through a firm in Etobicoke that handled corporate due diligence. She paid cash. She asked for documentation only. No surveillance, no photographs of people. She wanted paper. What she received 6 weeks later was a file that confirmed what she already understood. The hotel, the dates, the name on the guest register, his name, a second name, a woman Lydia did not recognize, who turned out to be a junior associate at a firm 2 floors below Brendan's in the same building. Lydia read the file twice. She put it in the locked drawer in her office at Vos Maison headquarters. She said nothing. She needed to think clearly. She had always done her best thinking when she was not yet moving. The anniversary dinner had been Brendan's idea. 14 years, he had said, we should do something. She had agreed. She had arranged the venue, the catering, the guest list, the flowers. She had worn a dress she liked and a pair of earrings from the first Vos Maison collection. Small, plain, a private joke she kept with herself. She had not known about the necklace until he presented it. When she closed the box, the room went quiet in the particular way. Rooms go quiet when something unexpected happens, and no one is sure yet what it means. Brendan's smile held, but something shifted behind it. Don't you want to try it on? He said. Lydia looked at him across the small distance between them. She had known this man for 11 years. She had watched his face in every condition, exhausted, elated, frightened, certain, wrong. She knew exactly what the current expression meant. He had bought something. He believed it was sufficient. Before I put it on, she said, her voice calm, I'd like to have it looked at. A small breath of a pause. Looked at, he repeated. She said, there's a gemologist here tonight. Paulette Renard. She's a client of mine. I'd like her opinion. Brendan laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind that men produce when they are trying to make a situation into a joke before it becomes something else. Lydia, it's a gift. You don't appraise a gift. I appraise everything, she said. You know that. Someone in the room made a small sound. Edmund Fair at the far table had gone very still. Paulette Renard, 52, was a certified gemologist with 30 years in the industry who had been a Vos Maison client since the Yorkville opening. She was also someone who knew exactly who Lydia was and had known since the beginning and had never once mentioned it in social settings without explicit permission. Lydia found her near the bar. The clasp, Lydia said quietly. Paulette looked at the box, took out a loop from her bag. She carried one always out of habit and examined the necklace for perhaps 45 seconds. Then she looked up. Replica, she said. Good one, but replica. The stones are CZ. The clasp is stamped wrong. The serif on the M is heavier than the original. Whoever made this had access to a real piece to copy from, but they didn't have the actual specs. Thank you, Lydia said. She walked back to where Brendan was standing. The room had not recovered its earlier warmth. Guests were still in their seats, but conversations had died. People were watching the way people watch at weddings when the ceremony takes an unexpected turn, not wanting to miss anything, not wanting to be caught watching. It's not real, Lydia said. She was not speaking loudly. She didn't need to. The room was quiet enough. Brendan's face shifted through several things at once. Surprise calculation, a decision. The jeweler told me it was. Which jeweler? A pause. There's a market in Kensington, a man there. He said it was. He sold you a replica of a Vos Maison piece for. She stopped. How much did you pay? Silence. Brendan, how much? $80, he said. His voice was very quiet. Edmund Fair pushed back his chair. Constance had a hand over her mouth. Lydia looked at her husband. She thought of the hotel receipts in the locked drawer. She thought of the Wednesday afternoons. She thought of every Sunday dinner where her father-in-law had praised the company she had built from a napkin sketch, not knowing, never once considering that she might be the person who had built it. She thought of Brendan's voice, 11 years ago. I think you're going to do it. She had, and he had stopped noticing somewhere along the way. She set the box on the table in front of him. She reached into the small clutch she was carrying and removed a card, white cardstock. The Vos Maison logo, that serif M, the one Paulette had just identified from a forgery, embossed in the upper left corner. Her name underneath, her title, Lydia Vos Fair, founder and principal, Vos Maison Group. She placed it next to the box. Edmund Fair's face did what faces do when something long assumed turns out to be wrong. He looked at the card. He looked at his son. He looked at the card again. That's, he started. Yes, Lydia said. The Vos Maison, he said. The company. That's my company, she said. Yes. Constance's champagne glass was still in her hand. She did not appear to know what to do with it. Brendan had not moved. He was looking at the card the way a person looks at something when all the context they thought they had suddenly requires revision. You never said, he said. You stopped asking, she said. It was not an accusation exactly. It was a fact. She had stated it the way she stated facts about supply chains and margin targets, plainly, without decoration, because there was no value in softening a thing that was simply true. She had called her lawyer 3 weeks earlier. not because she had made a final decision. She was not someone who made final decisions before she had examined the full picture, but because she wanted to understand the landscape. Lydia had always believed in knowing the terrain before she moved. The conversation had been practical. She had documentation, the investigator's report, the hotel records, the timeline. In a province like Ontario, these things carried weight. Her lawyer, a woman named Dolores Fitch, who had handled Voss Mason's corporate work for 6 years, had listened and then said, "Whenever you're ready, we can move quickly." Lydia had said, "I'll let you know." She had filed the paperwork the morning of the anniversary dinner. Brendan found out 3 days later when the documents arrived at his office. He called her on a Wednesday afternoon. The irony of the timing was not lost on her, and said her name in the voice of a man who has realized too late that he has significantly misread a situation. She let it go to voicemail. He came home that evening. She was in the kitchen making tea, and she let him talk. He said, "I don't understand," he said. "I know things haven't been good, but I didn't think." He said, "Can we please discuss this?" She said, "The necklace, the one you bought me for our anniversary. You paid $80 for a replica of something I designed. You presented it to me in front of 47 people, including your father, who has spent 2 years talking about my company, like it's one of the great mysteries of Canadian commerce. And you didn't know. After 14 years of marriage, you did not know." He started to say something. "I'm not asking you to explain," she said. "I'm telling you what happened. There's a difference." He sat down at the kitchen table. For a long time, neither of them said anything. "I was stressed," he finally said. "This last year the firm has been difficult, and Brendan," she said quietly. "I know about the Harwick Hotel." The kitchen went very still. "I have documentation," she said. "I'm not angry. I want you to understand that. I'm past the part where I'm angry. I'm in the part where I'm deciding what comes next, and I've already decided." He looked at her for a long time. "How long have you known?" he said. 6 weeks, she said. "And you still—" He stopped. "You still came to the dinner." "I had a decision to make," she said. "I needed one more piece of information." "What information?" She picked up her tea. "Whether you'd do the right thing on your own." He hadn't. He had spent $80 on a counterfeit version of something she had built with her hands and her name. And he had stood in a ballroom and believed it was enough. And he had not known, genuinely, completely had not known, that the woman he was handing it to had designed the original herself. That had been the answer she was waiting for. The separation was handled quickly and without spectacle, in the manner of two people who had both retained competent lawyers and who understood that drawn-out conflict served no one. Lydia moved to a condominium in the distillery district that she had owned for 3 years as an investment property. She had a guest room. She had a kitchen she liked. She had, within 3 weeks, a routine that felt more her own than anything had in the last several years of marriage. Edmund Fair called her once, about a month after the filing. She answered, because she respected the gesture even if she had not expected it. He said he wanted to apologize, not on Brendan's behalf. Brendan was a grown man and responsible for himself. He said he wanted to apologize for his own part in it, for the Sunday dinners, for talking about her company like it was some charming mystery when the answer had been sitting across the table the whole time. "You didn't know," she said. "I should have asked," he said. "What do you do, Lydia? What have you built?" "I never asked." She didn't tell him it was all right because it wasn't entirely. But she told him she appreciated the call. She meant it. Constance sent flowers. Lydia put them in the condominium's hallway and thought, not for the first time, that people often showed up better after things fell apart than they had managed to during them. The Latitude collection sold out its 4th run in 11 days. The piece she had worn to the anniversary dinner, the real one, a prototype she had kept, sat in a glass case in her office. She looked at it sometimes when she was on calls. It reminded her of the beginning, when everything was uncertain, and the only thing she had been sure of was that she was going to build the thing regardless. She hired a new creative director that spring, a woman from Winnipeg, mid-30s, with the kind of restless precision that Lydia recognized because she had once had it in exactly that form. They did not agree on everything. Lydia found that promising. A journalist from a national magazine reached out in April. They had apparently been investigating the ownership of Voss Maison for some time. There had been speculation for years about who was behind it, and someone at the anniversary dinner had talked. Lydia agreed to a brief interview on the condition that it focus on the company and not the marriage. The article ran in June. The headline called her a ghost architect of Canadian luxury. She thought it was a bit theatrical but not inaccurate. The quote that got picked up and circulated most widely was one she had said almost as an aside. "I never hid. I was just quiet. There's a difference." It was the same principle she had applied her whole career, to the company, to the negotiations, to the years of Sunday dinners and long weekends and conversations where she had listened more than she spoke. She had learned early on that people consistently mistook stillness for absence. They assumed that if someone wasn't announcing themselves, there was nothing to announce. It was a miscalculation she had never made about anyone else, and one she had always found it useful when others made it about her. Paulette Renard sent her a message 2 months after the dinner. It said, "I've been thinking about that clasp. Whoever made that replica was good. But they got the serif wrong on the M. It's a heavier stroke. Whoever designed the original had a lighter hand." Lydia read it and smiled. She wrote back, "The original was designed on a napkin. The hand was tired." Paulette responded, "Worth every penny of the 4,200. Lydia set her phone down and looked at the prototype in the glass case. She thought of Brendan, in the kitchen, asking how long she had known. She thought of Edmund on the phone saying, "I should have asked." She thought of the box, black velvet and cream satin, and the $80 copy of the thing she had made. Then she opened her laptop and went back to work. She had a 5th run to approve, and the timeline was already tight, and there was no part of her that wanted to be anywhere other than exactly here, doing exactly this, with no one's permission required and no one's understanding needed. She had built something real. It had held. That was enough. That had always been enough.